The wagon wasn't burning anymore, but the music box was still playing. Jake Mercer reined his horse at the ridgeline, squinting through smoke that hung low over the draw. He'd been riding back from Copper Ridge when he saw it. Black column, rising against clean September sky. Detoured off the trail, thinking maybe a grass fire. Not grass, 6 bodies. Adults, all of them, scattered around 3 burned wagons like someone had shaken out a bag of bones. Outlaws. Probably. Work was days old. Buzzards had already been at the soft parts. He should have kept riding. But then he heard it. Brahms' lullaby. Thin and bright, winding down slow. She was small. 9, maybe. Curled against a wagon wheel, one eye swollen shut, dark hair matted with ash. Her fingers locked around a brass music box, knuckles white even in sleep. Christ, she's just a baby. Jake checked her throat, pulse there, faint. Wrapped her in his duster, lifted her across the saddle. The music box kept playing as they rode, then stopped somewhere past the creek. She didn't wake. She didn't speak for 2 days, but her eyes followed him like he might disappear. Tom Brighthorse was mending the corral fence when Jake rode in with the girl. Didn't say nothing at first, just set down his hammer and walked over, slow. Looked at the child draped across Jake's saddle, the ash in her hair, the music box clutched to her chest. "Wagon train," Jake said, dismounting. Everyone else dead. Tom studied the girl's face. One eye swollen purple, cut across her cheek already scabbing. How long ago? 3 days, maybe 4. Buzzards had been at him. Jake lifted Clara down, careful, carried her into the cabin. Laid her on the cot by the stove. She was still out, pulse steady but her breathing shallow. He fetched water, a clean rag, checked her arms and legs for breaks, nothing but bruises in that eye. Tom stood in the doorway, watching. "You keeping her?" he asked. Jake wrung out the rag. "Just till she heals, then I'll take her to town." "Town ain't gonna want another mouth." Then the church. Tom was quiet a moment. When he spoke, his voice had that weight it got when he was about to say something Jake wouldn't like. "Child ain't a second chance, Jake. She's a first one." Jake's jaw tightened. He kept wiping ash from the girl's face. Didn't look up. "She ain't mine to keep." Tom nodded slow like he'd heard that before. "Reckon we'll see." Clara woke near sundown. Jake was at the stove, frying salt pork. He heard her gasp. Turned to see her scrambling back against the wall, eyes wide. That music box pressed to her chest like a shield. He froze, held his hands where she could see them. "You're all right," he said, voice low. "Nobody here gonna hurt you." She stared at him, breathing fast. Her good eye darted to the door, the window, back to him. "There's food," Jake said, nodding to the plate on the table. "Water, too. You need something, you just say." She didn't move. Jake turned back to the stove, gave her space. Heard her shift on the cot, but didn't look. A minute passed. 2. Then the soft creak of wood as she stood. He kept his back turned, scraping the pan. Heard her footsteps, light, uneven. The chair scraped. Silence. Then the sound of her drinking, desperate and shaky. When he finally glanced over, she'd eaten half the bread and was holding the tin cup with both hands, watching him. "You got a name?" he asked. She stared. "Don't gotta tell me, just figured." "Clara." Her voice was small, hoarse. Jake nodded. "I'm Jake. That fella you saw outside's Tom." "He works here sometimes?" She said nothing. "You remember what happened to the wagons?" Her face went blank. She set down the cup, looked at the music box in her lap. "All right," Jake said quiet. "Don't matter right now." He left a second plate on the table, back toward the door. "I'll be in the barn if you need something. Door don't lock, but nobody's coming. You're safe here." She watched him go, didn't say a word. Jake gave her the cabin, slept in the barn like he used to when Sarah was angry. Hay wasn't comfortable, but it was better than crowding a traumatized child. He lay awake on the old saddle blanket, staring at the rafters, listening to wind in the cottonwood. Tried not to think about the music box, that melody, he knew it. Sarah used to hum it when she was pregnant, hands on her belly, swaying by the window. Said her mama sang it to her. Said she'd sing it to their daughter. Never got the chance. Jake rolled over, jaw tight. Wasn't gonna do this. Wasn't gonna let some stranger's dead kid drag up. The music started, faint coming from the cabin. Brahms' lullaby, tinny and slow. Jake sat up, stood, walked to the barn door and stopped. Through the cabin window he could see her, small shadow by the fireplace winding the box. She set it on the table, watched it play, then she looked toward the barn, right at him, though she couldn't possibly see through the dark. Jake stepped back, kept walking, out past the corral, toward the hillside where Sarah's grave sat under the lone cottonwood. Stood there in the cold, fists clenched, while that goddamn lullaby played on the wind. When he finally came back, the cabin was dark. He didn't sleep. Next morning, he found her in the main room, trying to sweep with a broom twice her height. She'd washed her face, braided her hair back. The swelling around her eye had gone down some. You don't gotta do that, Jake said. She kept sweeping. Clara. She stopped, looked at him. You're hurt. You should rest. I can help. Her voice was still small, but steady. I don't want to be trouble. Jake studied her, 9 years old and already apologizing for surviving. You ain't trouble, he said. But if you're gonna sweep, hold it lower, like this. He showed her. She adjusted her grip, tried again. Better. Tom came by midday with a haunch of venison. Saw Clara hanging wet rags on the line, her own clothes, washed in the basin. He looked at Jake. She gonna stay? Jake watched the girl struggle with a sheet, too heavy for her small arms. Don't know. You're letting her do chores. She wanted to. Tom grunted. You know what that means. Aw, don't mean nothing. She's making a place. Tom said quiet. That's what it means. Jake said nothing. That night, Clara asked if she could sit on the porch. Jake said yes, brought out 2 chairs. They sat in silence while the sun dropped behind the mountains. She had the music box in her lap but didn't wind it. Will you tell me about her? Clara asked. Jake looked over. Who? Your wife? The one in the rocking chair? He'd forgotten Sarah's chair was still by the fireplace. 8 years and he'd never moved it. What makes you think I had a wife? Clara pointed at the grave on the hill. There's a cross up there, and you sleep in the barn. Smart kid. Her name was Sarah, Jake said finally. Clara waited. She died, having our daughter. They both did. I'm sorry. Jake shook his head. Was a long time ago. Does it stop hurting? He looked at her then, this small girl with ash still in her hair and a music box that used to belong to someone who loved her. No, he said, but you get used to carrying it. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Inside, the lamp burned low. Outside, the first stars came out. And for the first time in 8 years, Jake Mercer sat on his porch and didn't feel alone. But when Clara went to bed, she stood at the window and watched him walk to the barn. And she whispered to the glass, so quiet he'd never hear, "Please don't go." By the 3rd morning, she was washing dishes before he woke, like she could earn the right to stay. 5 days passed. Clara didn't talk much, but she moved through the cabin like she was learning its rhythms, woke before dawn, fed the chickens, swept the porch, folded the blankets Jake left in the barn, and set them by the door so he'd see them. Jake pretended not to notice. He worked longer hours, mending fence line that didn't need mending, checking cattle that were fine, riding the property edges till his gelding was tired, came back after dark, ate whatever she'd left on the stove, slept in the barn, kept his distance. Tom came by on the 4th day with a sack of cornmeal and a side-eye. You avoiding that child or the ghost? He asked, dropping the sack on the porch. Jake tightened the cinch on his saddle. Don't know what you mean. She's in there cooking. You're out here acting like the cabin's haunted. Just got work to do. Tom watched him a long moment. You know what happens if you keep this up. Nothing's happening. She heals, I take her to town. That's it. Uh-huh. Tom nodded toward the cabin window where Clara was visible, standing on a chair to reach the high shelf. That what you tell yourself when she's waiting on the porch every night? Jake swung up into the saddle. I got fence to check. Fence was fine yesterday, Jake wrote out. That afternoon, Clara tried to help with the fence repair, followed him out to the south pasture, carrying a coil of wire that dragged in the dirt behind her. Jake saw her coming and stopped hammering. What are you doing? Helping. She dropped the wire at his feet, breathing hard. You'll just get hurt. I won't. Clara, I can do it. I'm not... She stopped, face flushing. I'm not useless. Jake set down the hammer, looked at this small girl with her chin up, defiant, terrified he'd send her away if she wasn't useful enough. Never said you were useless. Then let me help. He should have said no. Should have sent her back to the cabin where it was safe. Instead, he handed her the wire cutters. You know how to use these? She shook her head. All right, watch. He showed her how to grip the handles, where to cut, let her try on a short piece. She struggled, hands too small, but got it done. Good, he said. Now you can hand me the wire when I need it. But you stay back from the posts. Barbed wire don't care how tough you are. She nodded, solemn, took her job seriously. They worked in silence for an hour. She handed him wire, held the stretcher when he asked, didn't complain. Once she brought him water without being told. Jake drank, handed back the canteen. Much obliged. She smiled. Small, but real. He turned away quick, went back to hammering. When they walked back at sunset, she was limping from blisters. Didn't say a word about it. Jake noticed. That evening, Clara tried to make supper. Jake came in from washing up to find the cabin full of smoke and the girl waving a towel at the stove, coughing. What happened? The beans just... She coughed again, eyes watering. Jake grabbed a pot holder, pulled the pot off the heat. Beans were black on the bottom, stuck hard. He set it outside, opened the window. Clara stood in the corner, shoulders hunched. "I'm sorry. I thought I could." "You're 9, Jake said, scraping the pot. "Nobody expects you to cook." "My mother's cook tried to teach me, but I didn't pay attention. I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought I'd have more time." Jake stopped scraping. The cabin went quiet, except for wind through the open window. He set down the pot, looked at her, this child who'd lost everything and was trying so damn hard to be worth keeping. "Come here," he said. She hesitated, then crossed to the stove. Jake showed her how to build the fire lower, how to stir so nothing stuck. Let her try, with a fresh pot of beans, stood behind her while she worked, ready to grab the pot if needed. "My mother had a cook?" Clara asked, stirring careful. "Sounds like it. We lived in San Francisco. Big house." She paused. "They were taking me to see the railroad. My father owned part of it." Jake's gut tightened. Railroad money. That explained the music box, the way she'd talked when she first woke. Formal, educated. "Where were you headed?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Montana Territory, some town called, I don't remember. Helena? Maybe." Jake said nothing. Helena was the capital. Railroad men, mining money, territorial government. If her father owned railroad stock, someone would be looking for her, someone with lawyers. Clara kept stirring, watching the beans like they might betray her. "What happened to them?" Jake asked. "Your folks." "Men came, at night." Her voice went flat. "They had guns. My father tried to. He told my mother to run with me, but." She stopped stirring. Jake waited. "I hid under the wagon, watched through the wheel spokes." She swallowed. "When it was quiet, I tried to find them, but everything was burning." Jake's chest tightened. 9 years old, and she'd watched her parents murdered. Hid while strangers burned the world? "The music box," he said quietly. "Your ma's?" Clara nodded. She kept it on her dressing table, played it every night before bed. Her hand went to her pocket, where she kept it now. "It's all I grabbed." The beans bubbled. She stirred them, mechanical. "They're ready," Jake said. She looked up, surprised. "They are?" He nodded toward the plates. "Dish 'em out." She did, careful, concentrated. Handed him a plate, took one for herself. They sat at the table, same as they had for 5 nights, but something felt different. Less like a rancher feeding a stray, more like... Jake pushed the thought away, took a bite. The beans were good, not burned, seasoned right. "Well?" Clara asked, watching him. "They'll do." She almost smiled. "Just, they'll do. Don't push your luck." This time she did smile. Small, but it reached her eyes. Jake looked away, forked another bite, felt something crack in his chest that he'd kept sealed for 8 years. After they ate, Clara washed the dishes. Jake sat on the porch, watching the sun drop. She came out with 2 cups of coffee, his black, hers mostly cream, sat in Sarah's chair without asking. "Will you tell me about her?" Clara asked. Jake looked over. "Who?" "Sarah, your wife." He should have said no, should have kept that door closed. "What do you want to know?" "What was she like?" Jake stared at the horizon. "Stubborn, laughed too loud, made terrible coffee." "Worse than mine?" "Yours ain't terrible. Hers was memorable." Clara smiled into her cup. "She liked music," Jake continued, not sure why he was talking. "Hummed all the time. That lullaby you got, she used to sing it." Clara went still. "The same one?" "Yeah." They sat in silence. Wind moved through the cottonwood up on the hill. "I think she'd like that I'm here," Clara said softly. Jake's throat tightened. He stood. "Getting late. You should sleep." "Are you going to the barn again?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Because." He headed for the steps. "Jake?" He stopped, didn't turn. "Thank you for the cooking lesson." He nodded once, kept walking. But when he reached the barn, he stood in the doorway a long time, looking back at the cabin, at the lamp burning in the window, at the shadow of a small girl moving inside, thinking about what Tom said. She's making a place. Next morning, Jake rode into Copper Ridge for supplies. Needed nails, kerosene, flour, things he could have waited on, but the cabin felt too small lately, too warm, too much like something he couldn't afford to want. Mrs. Adelaide Pritchard ran the general store. 60 years old, sharp-eyed, knew everyone's business before they did. She looked up when Jake walked in, eyebrows lifting. "Well now, twice in 2 weeks, that's a record." Jake set his list on the counter. Need these. She read it, humming, started pulling items. Heard you got yourself some company out there. Jake's jaw tightened. News travels. Tom Brighthorse mentioned it. Said you pulled a girl from a Wagon-Massacre. Mrs. Pritchard set down a sack of flour, studied him. That true? Yeah. She all right? Healin'. You keepin' her? Just till she's well, then I'll find her people. Mrs. Pritchard made a noise in her throat that could have meant anything. Kept gathering supplies. Then, casual as weather, Marshall came through yesterday. Jake went still. What for? Federal business. Looking for information. She set down a tin of kerosene. About the Hartwell family. The name hit like a fist. Jake kept his face neutral. Don't know any Hartwells. Railroad fortune out of San Francisco. Whole family massacred 3 weeks back on the Territorial Road. Mrs. Pritchard leaned on the counter. Father, mother, 4 guards. Outlaws after the payroll they were carrying. She paused. One child still missing. 9-year-old girl. Jake's blood went cold. Marshall's offering $500 for information leading to her recovery. At $500. More than Jake made in 2 years. More than enough to save his ranch from foreclosure. That's so, Jake said, voice flat. Mrs. Pritchard watched him close. Thought you'd want to know. In case you heard anything. Jake nodded. Paid for his supplies, in silence. Loaded them onto his horse, $500. For a girl who was worth 10 times that to the right people. A girl with railroad money, land holdings, inheritances. A girl who men had killed for and would kill for again. A girl who asked him about Sarah and smiled when the beans didn't burn. He rode back slow, mind working. Clara was reading by the fire when he got home. Looked up when he walked in, face brightening. You're back. I made... She stopped, seeing his expression. What's wrong? Jake set down the supplies. Looked at her, really looked. The fine bones in her face, the way she sat, back straight, even when she thought no one was watching. The music box on the table beside her, gold-catching lamplight. Not brass, gold. Nothing, he said. Just a long ride. But that night, lying in the barn, he stared at the rafters and thought about $500. About lawyers, and estates, and federal marshals. About a small girl who'd already lost everything once. She ain't mine to keep. The words felt different now, heavier. Like a lie he'd been telling himself to feel better about the truth. The day she asked to see his wife's grave, he knew he was already lost. 2 weeks passed. October came in with frost on the grass and cattle restless in the morning cold. Jake fixed the barn roof, cleared the irrigation ditch, cut firewood for winter. Clara worked beside him when he let her, which was more often now, though he didn't examine why. She was learning how to carry an axe without dropping it, how to read the sky for weather, how to walk quiet so the chickens didn't scatter. She talked more, too. Small things. About a book she'd read, about missing chocolate, about how her feet hurt in boots too big. Jake mostly listened, grunted responses, but he listened. Evenings, they sat on the porch. She'd bring coffee, he'd pretend it was too sweet. They'd watch the sun drop behind the mountains and not say much. It felt dangerous. This easy rhythm. This quiet company. One night, Clara brought the music box outside. Set it on the railing between them. Jake stared at it. Hadn't seen it since that first night in the barn. I haven't wound it in a while, Clara said softly. I was afraid. If I played it too much, it might break. Jake understood that. Some things you held too tight, they stopped meaning what they used to. Your ma gave it to you? For my 7th birthday. Clara traced the engraved lid with one finger. She said, every proper young lady needs music in her life. A pause. I don't think she meant like this. Like what? Where it's the only thing left. Wind moved through the cottonwood up on the hill, the same tree that marked Sarah's grave. Clara looked at the music box, then at Jake. Would you hold it, just for a minute? Jake's chest tightened. Why? Because it feels too heavy sometimes. And I thought maybe if someone else held it. She didn't finish, didn't need to. Jake reached out slow, took the music box. It was lighter than he expected, small enough to fit in his palm. The brass was tarnished, but the engraving was clear to Clara with love, Mother. His hands trembled, just slightly. My mother used to wind it every night, Clara said, voice distant, before bed. She'd set it on my nightstand and say, sweet dreams, little bird. That's what she called me. Jake's thumb brushed the winding key. He could turn it, hear that melody again. The one Sarah used to hum while she sewed by the window, belly round with their daughter who'd never take a breath. It's all I have of her, Clara whispered. Jake looked at her then, really looked. This small girl who'd hidden under a burning wagon, who'd watched her parents die, who'd held on to one fragile thing because letting go meant losing them forever. He understood that too. She'd want you to keep it safe, Jake said quietly, handing it back. Clara took it, cradled it against her chest. My father said the same thing about my mother before... She stopped. Before what? Before the men came. He told her to run, gave her his gun, told her to take me and run. Clara's voice went hollow. She tried, but there were too many. Jake's jaw clenched. You don't got to talk about it. I want to. She looked at him. I need someone to know what they were like, so they're not just names on a reward poster. The words hit different. Reward poster. She knew, or suspected. You heard about the marshal, Jake said. Not a question. Clara nodded. Mrs. Pritchard was talking to someone outside the store when we rode past last week. I heard her say Hartwell girl and $500. Why didn't you say nothing? Because I was afraid you'd realize I'm worth more gone than staying. The honesty of it damn near broke him. Jake set down his coffee cup, stared at the horizon going dark. That what you think? He asked. That I'm keeping you for money? No. Her voice was small. But I think, if someone official came, with papers, you'd have to give me up because that's the law. She wasn't wrong. And if they take me back to San Francisco, Clara continued, they'll put me with some executor, some lawyer who knew my father, and I'll live in that big house with people paid to take care of me, and nobody will... She stopped, throat working. Nobody will what? Nobody will care if I'm there or not. Jake was quiet a long moment, then, you want to see where Sarah is? Clara looked up, surprised. Your wife? Yeah, up on that hill. He nodded toward the cottonwood. Figured, if you're going to tell me about your ma, seems right you know about mine. Clara studied his face. Are you sure? Wouldn't offer if I wasn't. They walked up the hillside in the last of the daylight. The grass was dry, brittle under their feet. The cottonwood stood alone at the top, branches bare against a sky going purple. Sarah's grave was simple. Wooden cross, weathered gray, no name carved. Jake had never been good with letters. But he knew where she was, could have found this spot blind. Clara knelt, set the music box carefully in the grass, pulled a handful of wildflowers from her pocket. Jake hadn't even seen her pick them, and laid them at the base of the cross. Hello, Clara said softly. My name's Clara. I'm staying with Jake for a while. Jake stood back, hands in his pockets, throat tight. He's been very kind, Clara continued, like she was having tea with the dead. Taught me to cook beans, and how to hold an axe. And, her voice wavered, and he doesn't make me feel like I'm broken. Wind moved through the cottonwood, slow, gentle, the sound like breathing. Clara looked up at Jake. Do you talk to her? Sometimes. What do you say? Jake looked at the cross, at the dirt he'd packed down 8 years ago with his own hands. That I'm sorry, he said, voice rough. That I wasn't enough. Clara stood, brushed off her knees. Enough for what? To save her. The words came hard. I was at a cattle auction, 2 towns over. Sarah went into labor early, 3 weeks early. I wasn't there. Yet you didn't know she would... Should have known. Should have stayed close, but I was trying to... He stopped, jaw working. We needed money, for the baby, for the ranch, so I went to sell cattle, and He couldn't finish. Clara stepped closer. What happened? Midwife did what she could. But the baby, our daughter, she was turned wrong, wouldn't come. By the time I got home, Jake's voice cracked. Sarah was still breathing, barely. She held that little girl, Emma, she'd named her, and she looked at me and said, tell her I tried. His hands were shaking now. Then she died, both of them, in the bed I built, while I was 50 miles away counting money. Silence. Just wind and the creak of cottonwood branches. Clara's hand found his, small, warm, steady. You were taking care of them, she said quietly. That's what fathers do. I should have been there. My father was there. Her voice was soft but clear, right there when those men came. And he still couldn't save us. She squeezed his hand. Being there doesn't always mean you can stop it. Jake looked down at her. This 9-year-old girl with more loss than most men twice his age, standing at a stranger's grave and offering him forgiveness he didn't deserve. I don't think she blames you, Clara said. The words settled in his chest like stones in water. Sinking deep, he nodded, couldn't speak. They stood there while the sky went from purple to black and the first stars came out. Clara didn't let go of his hand. Finally, she bent and picked up the music box from the grass. Can I come back? She asked. To visit her? Yeah. Jake's voice was hoarse. Yeah, you can. They walked back down the hill in near dark. Clara's hand stayed in his. First time she'd touched him on purpose. First time he'd let her. It felt too much like hope. Halfway down, she said, "Thank you for showing me." Jake nodded. "And for telling me about Emma." His throat tightened. Nobody had said his daughter's name out loud in 8 years. Hearing it now, in this child's voice, felt like resurrection and burial at once. When they reached the cabin, Tom was waiting on the porch, stood when he saw them coming. "Trouble?" Jake asked. Tom glanced at Clara, then back to Jake. "Ryder's been through town, asking questions." Jake's gut clenched. What kind of questions? About massacres, about missing children. Tom's voice was careful. About estates and inheritance? Clara's hand tightened in Jake's. "How many riders?" Jake asked. "3. Well-dressed, city types." Tom paused. Marshal Caldwell was with them. The name hung in the air like smoke. Jake let go of Clara's hand. "When?" "This afternoon. Mrs. Pritchard told him she hadn't heard nothing. But they're asking at every ranch within 50 miles. Clara's face had gone pale in the lamplight from the cabin window. "How long we got?" Jake asked. Tom shook his head. "Week, maybe less." Jake nodded slowly, thinking. Calculating distances, options, how fast a 9-year-old could ride if it came to that. Tom tipped his hat. "I'll keep my ear down, let you know if I hear more." He looked at Clara. "You stay close to the cabin, understand?" She nodded. After Tom left, Clara stood on the porch, hugging herself. Jake started for the barn, but her voice stopped him. "Jake?" He turned. "If someone came for me," her voice was small, "with papers, legal papers, would you let them take me?" The question he'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. Jake looked at her, this girl who asked about Sarah, who laid flowers at a stranger's grave, who'd held his hand while he confessed his failures. "Nobody's coming," he said. "But if they did..." "Clara," his voice was harder than he meant, "nobody's taking you anywhere." She stared at him. "You mean that?" Jake's jaw clenched. He should say no, should tell her the truth, that he had no legal right, no claim, no power against federal marshals and railroad lawyers. Instead, he said, "Get inside. It's cold." She didn't move. "Jake, go on." She hesitated, then went in, but she stood at the window watching him. Jake walked to the barn, didn't look back. Inside, he lit the lamp, went to the corner where his rifle hung, wrapped in oilcloth. Hadn't touched it since Sarah died, hadn't needed to, hadn't wanted to, unwrapped it now. The Winchester was dusty, but the action was clean. He checked the chamber, worked the lever, smooth, still good. He set it by his bedroll, within reach. Outside, wind rattled the barn door. From the cabin, he could see lamplight in the window, Clara's shadow moving inside. "She ain't mine to keep." The words tasted like ash, but when he closed his eyes, all he could see was her hand in his on that hillside, her voice saying, "I don't think she blames you." And he knew, God help him, he knew. He'd already made his choice. The rifle stayed loaded. The marshal's badge caught the morning light, same way a gun barrel does. Jake was splitting wood when he heard the horses. 3 riders coming up the trail from town, moving steady, not hurried, not cautious, official. He set down the axe, wiped his hands on his pants, walked to the cabin where Clara was hanging laundry. "Get inside," he said, voice low. She looked up, saw his face. "What's wrong?" "Just go." She went. Jake waited in the yard, hands loose at his sides. Tom emerged from the barn, rifle visible but not raised. The riders stopped 20 feet out. 2 deputies flanked a man in his late 30s, clean-shaven, dark suit, federal badge pinned to his vest. His eyes were hard, but not cruel. A man who believed in what he did. "Mr. Mercer?" the man said. "That's right." The marshal dismounted slow, hands visible. "I'm Augustus Caldwell, federal marshal out of Helena." He reached into his coat. Jake's hand twitched toward his belt, pulled out a folded paper. "I'm here on official business regarding a missing child." Jake didn't move. "Don't know nothing about any missing child." Caldwell unfolded the paper. It was a poster, printed, professional. At the top, reward, $500. Below that, a sketch of a young girl's face. Below that, Clara Hartwell, age 9, last seen September 12, 1887. "Witnesses in Copper Ridge say you have a young girl staying here," Caldwell said. "Arrived approximately 3 weeks ago, injured. Lots of folks pass through. Mr. Mercer." Caldwell's voice stayed level. "The Hartwell family was murdered on the Territorial Road. Father, mother, 4 guards, 1 child survived. The estate has legal claim to that child, and I have federal authority to recover her." Jake's jaw clenched. "And if I told you I don't know any Hartwell, then I'd say you're obstructing justice." Silence. Wind moved through the dry grass. One of the deputies shifted in his saddle, hand near his revolver. Then the cabin door opened, Clara stood in the doorway, small and pale, clutching the music box to her chest. She looked at the marshal, at the poster in his hand, at Jake. Her face wasn't relieved, it was terrified. Caldwell's expression softened slightly. Miss Hartwell, thank God. Your family's estate has been searching for you. Clara didn't move. It's all right, Caldwell said, taking a step forward. You're safe now. We're here to take you home. I am home, Clara whispered. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Caldwell glanced at Jake, then back to Clara. Miss Hartwell, I understand you've been through trauma, but Mr. Mercer has no legal right to keep you. Your father's estate has appointed legal guardians. I don't want their guardians. Clara's voice was stronger now. I want to stay here. That's not your decision to make. You're a minor. She's a person, Jake said, voice hard. Caldwell turned. Mr. Mercer, I respect what you've done, saving her life, providing shelter. The estate will compensate you for your trouble. Don't want compensation. Nevertheless, I have legal custody papers being prepared in Helena. I'll return in 1 week to collect Miss Hartwell and escort her to San Francisco, where... No. Clara's voice cracked. She ran to Jake, grabbed his arm. Don't let them take me, please. Jake looked down at her, this small girl who'd laid flowers at Sarah's grave, who'd held his hand in the dark, who'd told him he wasn't to blame. His hand covered hers. Nobody's taken you. One of the deputies reached for his gun. Tom's rifle came up smooth. Easy, Caldwell said, raising a hand. Nobody moved. Mr. Mercer, think about what you're doing. You can't fight federal law. Can try. You'll lose your ranch, go to prison, and she'll still end up in San Francisco. Caldwell's voice was almost gentle. Is that what you want for her, to watch you dragged away in chains? Jake's grip on Clara tightened. Caldwell sighed. 1 week, get your affairs in order, say your goodbyes, but when I come back with those papers, she's coming with me. He looked at Clara. I'm sorry, child. I truly am, but the law is the law. He mounted, nodded to his deputies. They turned their horses. Marshal, Jake called. Caldwell stopped. She's happy here, safe, cared for. Jake's voice was rough. That worth less than some lawyer's signature? Caldwell looked back. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, regret. It's not about what she wants, Mr. Mercer. It's about what's legal. He touched his hat brim. 1 week. They rode out. Jake stood in the yard until the dust settled. Clara's arms were around his waist, face pressed against his side, shaking. Tom lowered his rifle. What are you going to do? Jake looked at the horizon. Don't know yet. Inside the cabin, Clara wouldn't let go. She sat at the table, music box clutched to her chest, staring at nothing. Jake paced, stopped, started again. Why didn't you tell me? He finally said. She looked up. Tell you what? Who you were. What you were worth. I did tell you. About my parents. About... You didn't tell me you were an heiress. That there'd be lawyers, federal marshals. His voice was harder than he meant. You didn't tell me keeping you could cost me everything. Clara flinched. Would it have changed anything? Jake stopped pacing. I don't know. Yes, you do. Her eyes were bright with tears. If I'd told you that first day, hello, I'm Clara Hartwell. My father owned half the Northern Pacific Railroad. You would have taken me straight to town, handed me over, because that's what people do with valuable things. They trade them. That ain't fair. Isn't it? Clara stood, set the music box on the table, pushed it toward him. Look at it, really look. Jake stared at the box. In the lamplight, he could see what he'd missed before, or what he'd chosen not to see. The brass wasn't tarnished. It was gold, real gold, engraved with flourishes no ranch hand could afford. The kind of thing you kept in a mansion, not a burned wagon. This is worth more than your ranch, Clara said, voice shaking. More than 2 ranches. My mother's jewelry box. 18-karat gold. French mechanism. She wiped her eyes. Take it. Sell it. Pay your debts. Pay whatever it costs to make them leave me alone. Jake's chest tightened. Clara, that's what you want, isn't it? That's why you've been so kind. Because you knew. I didn't know. His voice was sharp. Not at first. She went still. But you do now. Silence. Mrs. Pritchard told me, Jake admitted. 2 weeks ago. About the reward. Clara's face crumpled. And you didn't say anything. I didn't know how. You let me think. She couldn't finish. Grabbed the music box, shoved it harder across the table. Just take it. That's what this was about, wasn't it? You save the orphan, wait for the reward, cash in. That's not. Then what is it? Clara was crying now, really crying. Because if you're not keeping me for money, and you can't fight the law, and you won't run, then what's the point? Why did you even— She stopped, pressed her hands over her face. Jake stared at the music box, this thing she'd held onto through fire and death, the last piece of her mother she had left. And she was trying to buy her way into staying, trying to make herself worth the trouble. You think that's what this is about? He said quietly. She lowered her hands. Isn't it? No. Then why are you so angry? Because I don't know how to save you. The words came out raw. Because they got law and money and papers, and all I got is a failing ranch and a rifle. Because you're 9 years old and you shouldn't have to— He stopped, jaw working. Claire's voice was small. Shouldn't have to what? Buy your way into being loved. The words fell between them like stones. Clara stared at him. Then, you do want me to stay? Jake couldn't look at her. Don't matter what I want. It matters to me. He shook his head, started for the door. Jake, I need to think. He walked out, didn't stop when she called after him. Went straight to the barn, to the dark where he could breathe. But even there, he could hear it. That music box, winding down in the cabin, playing Brahms' lullaby. The same song Sarah used to hum, the same song he'd have to let go. He sank onto a hay bale, head in his hands. She ain't mine to keep. This time the words felt like surrender. He found her trying to saddle his horse in the dark, and neither of them said the thing they meant. 3 days passed like open wounds. Jake worked dawn to dusk, fixed fence that didn't need fixing, rode the property line twice a day, slept in the barn with his rifle in reach and his door barred. Clara stopped trying, stopped cooking, stopped sweeping, stopped waiting on the porch with coffee that was too sweet. She moved through the cabin like a ghost, pale, silent, eating only when Tom left food, and stood there until she took a bite. The music box sat on the table where she'd shoved it. Neither of them touched it. Tom came every morning, checked on Clara, reported on Jake, shook his head at both of them. You gonna talk to her? He asked on the third day. Jake hammered a post that was already secure. What's there to say? That you're scared. That you don't know what to do. That you— She knows. Does she? Tom leaned on the fence. Because from where I'm standing, she thinks you're counting days till the marshal comes back. Jake's hammer slipped. He cursed, shook out his hand. You got 4 days left, Tom said quietly. Then Caldwell shows up with papers and you gotta choose. Ain't no choice. Law's the law. Tom was quiet a long moment. You know, when my daughter got sick, smallpox, back in '76, the Indian agent said we couldn't use our medicine. Had to use their doctor. Army doctor who didn't know our ways, didn't care to learn. His voice went rough. I followed their law, used their medicine, and I watched her die anyway. Jake stopped hammering. Sometimes the law ain't right, Tom said. Sometimes it's just the law. He walked away before Jake could respond. That night, Jake came back late to find the cabin dark. No lamp burning, no smoke from the chimney. His gut clenched. He pushed inside. Clara was curled on the cot, facing the wall, still dressed. Hadn't even taken off her boots. You eat? Jake asked. No answer. Clara. I'm not hungry. Jake stood there, useless. You gotta eat. Why? Because. So I'm healthy when they take me? She didn't turn around. So I look good for the lawyers? Jake's throat tightened. That ain't. Just leave me alone. And he should have pushed. Should have made her eat, made her talk, made her see he was trying to— What? What was he trying to do? He left. But halfway to the barn, he heard it. Soft, muffled, crying. Jake stopped. Stood in the dark with his fists clenched, listening to a 9-year-old girl sob into a pillow because she thought nobody wanted her. Because he'd let her think that. He turned back toward the cabin, got as far as the porch, stopped. What could he say? That he wanted to keep her but didn't know how? That he'd fight but would lose? That he'd already failed one daughter and couldn't bear to— The crying stopped. Jake waited. Silence. He went to the barn. The fourth night, Jake heard the barn door creak. He was up in seconds, rifle in hand. But it wasn't outlaws or marshals, it was Clara. Small shadow in the doorway, struggling with his saddle. It was almost as big as she was. Heavy leather and iron hardware. She'd gotten it off the rack but couldn't lift it high enough. What are you doing? Jake asked. She jumped, nearly dropped the saddle. Saw him. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. I'm leaving, she said, voice shaking. Leaving where? I don't know, somewhere. She tried again to lift the saddle. Failed. I can't stay here and wait for them to— Clara, it's 30 miles to town. You'd freeze before dawn. I don't care. Jake set down the rifle, crossed to her. Yes, you do. No, I don't. She shoved the saddle. It hit the ground with a thud. I don't care about anything anymore. I thought you... She couldn't finish, pressed her hands over her face. Jake stood there, watching her break. The small girl who'd survived massacre and loss and now thought the one person she'd trusted was going to hand her over to strangers for money. Clara, just let me go. Her voice was muffled behind her hands. I won't tell anyone where I've been. You can still get the reward. I'll say I was alone the whole time. I don't want the goddamn reward. She lowered her hands, stared at him. I don't want their money, Jake said, voice rough. I don't want their lawyers or their papers or their... Then why won't you fight for me? The question hung between them like a blade. Because I got no right, Jake said finally. You're the only family I have left. I ain't your family. The words came out harsher than he meant. I'm a broke rancher who found you by accident, that's all. Clara flinched like he'd struck her. That's not true, she whispered. It is true. Your real family's in San Francisco. People with your name, your blood, my real family is dead. Her voice cracked. Buried on the territorial road. All I have is... She stopped, swallowed. All I have is you. Jake's chest felt like it was caving in. And you won't even... She couldn't finish. Turned away, shoulders shaking. I can't be what you need, Jake said quietly. Clara spun back. You already are. You taught me to cook. You showed me Sarah's grave. You held my mother's music box, and you didn't look at it like it was money. You looked at it like you understood. That don't make me your father. I don't need you to be my father. Tears streamed down her face. I just need you to want me to stay. The words broke something in him. Jake opened his mouth, closed it, didn't know what to say. Clara stared at him, waiting, hoping. When he didn't answer, something died in her eyes. You don't, she whispered. You don't want me to stay. That ain't... It's fine. Her voice went flat. I understand. I'm trouble. I'm expensive. Stop. Why? It's true, isn't it? The marshal was right. You can't fight federal law. You'll lose your ranch. Maybe go to jail. And for what? Some girl you found in the dirt who... It wasn't an accident. Clara stopped. Jake's voice was rough, barely controlled. You said that before, at the grave. You said I prayed someone would come, and you did. She nodded slowly. It wasn't an accident, Jake repeated. I saw that smoke, and I could have kept riding. Should have kept riding. But I didn't. His hands were shaking now. And when I found you, this small girl with ash in her hair, and that music box still playing, I thought... He stopped. Couldn't say it. What? Clara whispered. What did you think? That maybe God was giving me a second chance. The barn went silent except for wind through the rafters. To save someone, Jake continued, voice breaking. To not fail. To not be too late for once in my goddamn life. Clara was crying again, but different now. Quieter. But I can't save you from this, Jake said. Can't save you from lawyers and federal marshals and a fortune that makes you worth more than I'll ever... He stopped, turned away. So yeah, I want you to stay. The admission came out like a confession. I want it so much it scares me, but wantin' don't change the law. Silence. Then Clara's small voice. We could run. Jake looked back at her. Tonight, she said. Before they come back, we could just... go. Jake stared at her. Run where? Anywhere. Canada, Mexico, just away from here. Clara, you said you wanted me to stay, so let's go, tonight. Before... And live how? His voice was gentle but firm. On what? I got maybe $30 to my name. Horse can't carry two people far, and they'd hunt us. Federal marshals don't stop hunting. Then what do we do? Jake had no answer. Clara sank onto a hay bale, face in her hands. The fight drained out of her all at once. I thought... Her voice was muffled. When you found me, when you brought me here, I thought maybe I could have a home again. A real one. Not some mansion with strangers, just you and Tom and the chickens and... She broke off, crying too hard to speak. Jake stood frozen. Every instinct screamed at him to comfort her, hold her, promise her it would be okay. But he couldn't promise that, so he just stood there like a coward while she wept. Finally, he crossed to the corner, to where he'd left the music box after she'd shoved it at him 3 days ago. He'd brought it out here, couldn't bear to see it on the table. He picked it up, wound it. Brahms' lullaby filled the barn, tinny, fragile, heartbreaking. Clara looked up, tears streaming. Jake held it out to her. This ain't money to me, never was. She took it with shaking hands. Your ma gave you this, Jake said quietly, because she loved you. Not because you earned it, or bought it, or... His voice cracked. She just loved you, and that's what it means. Clara cradled the box against her chest. Then why can't you? Because I already failed once. The words tore out of him. I already lost the people I was supposed to protect. And then it came. The memory he'd buried for 8 years. He was in the barn in Montana, 1887. But he was also on a dirt road outside Billings, 1879. Riding hard, horse lathered, rain pouring down. Neighbor boy had found him at the auction yard. Said Sarah was in labor. Said it was bad. Jake had ridden 30 miles in 4 hours. Killed the horse doing it. Burst into the cabin, soaking wet, to find the midwife kneeling by the bed, head bowed. Sarah barely conscious, her nightgown soaked with blood, a tiny bundle in her arms, too small, too still, too blue. Jake fell to his knees beside the bed. Sarah. Her eyes opened, so tired. Her name was Emma. Don't. His voice broke. Don't talk. Save your strength. Tell her I tried. Sarah's hand found his, cold and weak. Tell her her mama tried. You're going to be fine. Both of you. Just. But even as he said it, he knew. Could see it in the midwife's face. In the too much blood. In Sarah's eyes already going distant. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I'm so sorry I couldn't. No. Jake gripped her hand. No, you got nothing to be sorry for. This is my fault. I should have been here. I should have. You were doing what you had to. Her breathing was shallow now. For us. For her. Sarah, please. Take care of them. Her eyes drifted to the window where the cottonwood stood. Both of them. Promise me. I promise. But you're gonna be. Her hand went slack in his. Jake came back to the present on his knees in the barn. Music box still playing. Clara's small hand on his shoulder. Jake? Her voice was scared. Jake, what's wrong? He couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. She asked me to take care of them. He finally managed. Sarah, before she died. She asked me to take care of her and the baby, and I said I would. Clara knelt beside him. But they were already gone, Jake whispered. Both of them. And I'd been 50 miles away, making money while they... He stopped, throat closing. You didn't know, Clara said softly. Should have known. Should have stayed. You were taking care of them. That's what you said. You went to sell cattle for money you needed. And while I was gone, they died. Jake's voice was raw. I promised Sarah I'd take care of them. And I couldn't even... You kept your promise. He looked at her. Clara's face was serious, wise beyond her years. You buried them. You planted that tree. You visit every day, don't you? Jake nodded, unable to speak. That's taking care of them, Clara said. That's keeping your promise. The music box wound down. Silence filled the barn. But you, Clara continued quietly, you stopped taking care of yourself. The truth of it hit like a fist. Next morning, Jake walked up to Sarah's grave alone. The cottonwood stood bare against a sky the color of old bruises. First real frost had come in the night. Grass was white with it, ground hard. Jake knelt at the wooden cross, traced the weather-worn wood with his fingers. I don't know what to do, he said aloud. Wind rattled the branches. No answer. There's this girl, Clara, you'd like her. His voice was rough. She's smart, stubborn, makes terrible coffee, but she's learning. Silence. She lost her parents. Same way I lost you. Jake's hands clenched. And she asked me to fight for her, to keep her. And I want to, Sarah. God, I want to, but I don't. His voice broke. I don't know if I got any fight left. He pressed his forehead against the cross, felt the cold wood, the unforgiving earth. I couldn't save you, he whispered. Couldn't save Emma. And now there's Clara, and she's got a whole life waiting. People who can give her everything. And I got nothing but this dead ranch. And ghosts. Jake turned. Tom stood at the bottom of the hill, hands in his pockets. How long you been there? Jake asked. Long enough. Tom climbed up slow, stood beside the grave. You think Sarah wants you up here apologizing for still breathing? I ain't. That's exactly what you're doing. Tom's voice was gentle but firm. You've been dying up here for 8 years, Jake. Working yourself to nothing. Sleeping in barns, pushing away anyone who gets close. He paused. Sarah didn't ask you to die with her. She asked you to live. Jake's jaw clenched. You don't understand. I understand a man too scared to try again because he might fail. Tom looked at him. But you already failed, brother. You failed the day you decided being alive wasn't worth the trouble. The words landed like stones. Clara don't need you to be perfect, Tom continued. She needs you to be there, to choose her, that's all. The law? To hell with the law. Tom's eyes were hard. My people know about laws, about being told where to live, how to pray, who our children belong to, and you know what we learned? Jake waited. Some things you don't ask permission for. You just fight. Wind moved through the cottonwood. Harsh now, winter sharp. Tom turned to leave, then stopped. You told me once, she ain't mine to keep. Jake nodded. Well, Tom looked back. Maybe she ain't yours to give away either. He walked down the hill, leaving Jake alone with the dead. Jake stared at Sarah's grave, at the empty cottonwood. At the ranch below, where smoke rose from the cabin chimney, Clara, making breakfast probably, even though she was scared and alone and thought nobody wanted her, the real guilt settled over him like snow. Not that he'd failed Sarah, but that he'd been failing Clara, failing himself, choosing death over the terrifying possibility of living again. Sarah had asked him to take care of them, her and Emma. He'd kept half that promise, buried them, tended them, mourned them. But the other half, the living half, he'd let die, until this small girl with ash in her hair, and a music box, and a desperate hope that someone might choose her. Jake stood, looked at the cabin one more time, then he walked down the hill, not to the barn, to the cabin, to Clara, to fight. The week before the marshal returned, winter came early, and the choices got simple. First snow fell on the 6th day. Jake woke in the cabin, first time in weeks he'd slept inside. Clara was already up, standing at the window watching white flakes fall thick and silent. It's early, she said without turning. For snow. Yeah. She looked at him then. They hadn't really talked since the barn, since he'd walked down from Sarah's grave and found her making breakfast with red eyes and shaking hands. He'd sat at the table, eaten her biscuits, said nothing. But he hadn't gone back to the barn. That meant something. How long do we have? Clara asked. Day, maybe 2, depends on the storm. She nodded, turned back to the window. What are we going to do? Jake stood, crossed to her, put his hand on her shoulder, first time he'd touched her on purpose since she'd held his hand at Sarah's grave. I don't know yet, he said, but we'll figure it out. Her hand came up, covered his. Together? Yeah, together. Tom came through the snow midday, leading a spare horse. Storm's gonna get worse, he said, stamping his feet on the porch. Caldwell might not make it through if it keeps up. Buys us time, Jake said. Time for what? Jake looked at Clara inside, reading by the fire. To think. Tom followed his gaze. You made a choice. Yeah. What is it? Jake was quiet a long moment. I can't fight him. Can't shoot a federal marshal. That's a hanging offense. Can't run far enough with winter coming and no money. He paused. But I can make him see she's better off here. Tom raised an eyebrow. You think words are going to change his mind? No, but maybe the truth will. What truth? That she's happy, safe, cared for. Jake's jaw set. That she chose this. And that's got to count for something. Tom studied him. You know, it won't work. Law don't care about happy. Only about legal. Then I'll go to San Francisco myself. Talk to these estate people. Tell 'em what? That a broke rancher wants custody of a railroad heiress? Tom shook his head. They'll laugh you out of the room. Then what am I supposed to do? Jake's voice cracked. Just hand her over? Watch 'em take her to some mansion where nobody gives a damn if she's scared or sad? Or, no, Tom's voice was firm. You fight, but you fight smart. How? Tom glanced at Clara again. You let her fight too. That evening, Jake and Clara sat at the table. The music box between them, no longer a weapon or a bribe. Just a thing that existed. A memory. I need to tell you something, Jake said. Clara set down her cup, waited. When I found you, I thought... He stopped, started again. I thought maybe I could save you. Fix what I couldn't fix before. And that'd be enough. Enough for what? To make up for Sarah, for Emma, for not being there when they needed me. Clara's face softened. Jake, but that ain't fair to you, he continued. You ain't a second chance. You're just you, Clara, and you deserve someone who wants you because you're you, not because he's trying to heal old wounds. Silence. Snow tapped against the window. Do you? Clara asked quietly. Want me because I'm me? Jake looked at her, this small girl with tangled hair and a stubborn chin and eyes too old for 9. Yeah, he said, I do. Her lip trembled. Even though I'm trouble? You ain't trouble. I come with marshals and lawyers and don't care. Jake, I don't care about the law or the money or the federal government. His voice was steady now. I care about you, about whether you're warm and fed and whether you smile sometimes. That's all that matters. Clara's eyes filled. Then why can't we just... Because they're coming. Tomorrow, maybe the day after. And when they do, we gotta be ready. Ready how? Jake leaned forward. You said you wanted to stay. That true? Yes. Even if it means fighting? Telling lawyers and judges and fancy people that you choose this ranch over their money? Clara didn't hesitate. Yes. Even if they don't listen, even if they take you anyway? Her voice was small but certain. I'll run away. I'll keep running until I get back here. Jake's chest tightened. You can't run from the law forever. Then what do we do? He took her hand across the table. We tell the truth. We tell Caldwell, tell the lawyers, tell anyone who'll listen that you're happy here. That this is your home, that you choose me. And if they say I'm too young to choose, then I'll apply for legal guardianship. Go through proper channels. Show them I can provide for you. But you said the ranches don't matter. I'll sell it if I have to. Work somebody else's land, long as you got a roof and food and... He stopped. Long as you're safe. That's all that matters. Clara stared at him. You'd give up the ranch? Already gave it up the day I brought you home. She stood, came around the table, threw her arms around him. He held her, this small, fierce thing who'd survived fire and death and still believed in goodness. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder. Jake closed his eyes. Ain't done nothing yet. You chose me. That's everything. That night, the snow stopped. Sky cleared to stars so bright they hurt to look at. Jake stood on the porch, watching the horizon. Tomorrow, maybe the next day, Caldwell would come, with papers and law, and the weight of a government that didn't care about a 9-year-old's tears. He couldn't win. Not really. Couldn't outshoot federal authority or outrun legal claims, but he could stand. Could look Caldwell in the eye and say, she's mine and I'm hers, and you'll have to drag us both. Maybe that wouldn't be enough. Probably wouldn't be. But it was all he had. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Clara came out, wrapped in a blanket. Can't sleep? Jake asked. No. She stood beside him, looking at the same stars. You? No. They were quiet a while. Then Clara said, whatever happens tomorrow, day after probably, roads will be bad. Whenever. Whatever happens. She took his hand. Thank you for wanting to fight. Jake squeezed her hand. Didn't trust his voice. I know we might lose, Clara continued. I know they might take me anyway. But at least I'll know someone tried. Someone cared enough to, Clara. Jake looked down at her. Win or lose. You're my daughter now. You understand? Papers or no papers, law or no law. You're mine. Her face crumpled. She pressed against his side, crying quiet tears into his shirt. Jake held her under a sky full of stars, on a porch in Montana, with winter settling in and marshals coming and the whole world lined up against them. But for this one moment, they had each other. And somehow that was enough. Inside, the lamp burned low. The music box sat on the table, still and silent. Outside, fresh snow covered old graves and new ground alike. And Jake Mercer, who'd been dying for 8 years, finally felt alive. Whatever came next, he'd face it standing. When Caldwell came with the papers, Jake was waiting with a choice that would cost him everything he had left. The marshal arrived 2 days later with an entourage. Not just deputies this time. 2 lawyers in dark suits, a clerk with a leather satchel, and Mrs. Pritchard from town, riding alongside in her wagon. Behind them, half of Copper Ridge, Reverend Cole, Dr. Wu, a handful of ranchers and their wives, witnesses. Jake stood in the yard, Clara beside him. Tom leaned against the porch rail, rifle visible but not threatening, just present. Caldwell dismounted slow, eyes taking in the scene. The cabin with smoke rising steady from the chimney. The barn, weathered but solid. The chickens, pecking in the yard. Clara in a clean dress, hair braided, standing straight. Not cowering, not afraid. Choosing. Mr. Mercer, Caldwell said, tipping his hat. Then to Clara. Miss Hartwell. Clara's hand found Jake's. Held tight. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Thin man, 50s, spectacles catching the winter light. I am Edward Thornton, representing the Hartwell estate. He pulled papers from the satchel. We have here legal documentation establishing guardianship of Clara Elizabeth Hartwell, age 9, sole surviving heir to... She's got a name, Jake said quietly. Use it. Thornton paused, adjusted his spectacles. Miss Hartwell is to be remanded to estate custody and transported to San Francisco where... No! The word came from Clara, small but clear. Thornton blinked. I beg your pardon. No, Clara repeated louder. I'm not going. Child, you don't understand the legal... I understand fine. Clara stepped forward, still holding Jake's hand. I understand you want to take me from my home, from the man who saved my life, from the only family I got left. Miss Hartwell, Miss Mercer is not your family? Your family's estate? My family is dead. Her voice cracked, but didn't break. Buried on the territorial road. All I got now is Jake. And he wants me to stay, and I want to stay. So that should count for something. Murmurs from the crowd. Mrs. Pritchard nodded slightly. Thornton looked to Caldwell for support. The marshal's face was unreadable. The law is clear, Thornton said, recovering. A minor child cannot determine her own guardianship. The estate has legal claim and financial resources too. I don't care about the money, Clara said. Nevertheless, I'll give it away, all of it. I'll sign whatever papers say I don't want it. Just let me stay here. Thornton's expression hardened. That's not legally possible. The estate is held in trust until you reach majority age. And even if you could relinquish it, Mr. Mercer has no legal standing to... Then I'll get standing, Jake said. All eyes turned to him. I'm applying for legal guardianship. Jake continued, voice steady. I got a ranch, livestock, clean water. I can provide for her. Thornton actually laughed. Mercer, do you have any idea what guardianship proceedings entail? Legal fees, character witnesses, home investigations. I'll do it, whatever it takes. You'd need to prove financial stability. I understand your ranch is mortgaged? Jake's jaw tightened. I'll sell it if I have to. Work someone else's land, long as Clara's got a roof and food. Admirable sentiment, Thornton cut in. But the Hartwell estate provides not just a roof and food, but education, society, opportunity. I provide family, Jake said quietly. The words settled over the yard like snow. Thornton shook his head. Marshal Caldwell, if you would execute the custody order. Caldwell hadn't moved. He stood there looking at Clara's hand in Jake's, at the clean cabin, at the girl who wasn't scared or broken, but standing tall. Marshal? Thornton prompted. Caldwell was quiet a long moment. Then, she looks well cared for. That's not the legal standard. I know what the legal standard is. Caldwell's voice had an edge now. But I also know this child survived a massacre, lost her parents, and somehow found her way to a place where she feels safe. He looked at Thornton. That's got to count for something. The law is the law, Marshal. Yeah. Caldwell's hand rested on his badge. It is. The crowd held its breath. Then Mrs. Pritchard's voice cut through. Marshal, might I say something? Caldwell nodded. Mrs. Pritchard climbed down from her wagon, walked forward. I've known Jake Mercer 15 years. Knew his wife Sarah, God rest her. Watched him bury her and that baby and damn near die himself from grief. Jake's throat tightened. He's been half dead ever since, Mrs. Pritchard continued, working himself into the ground, pushing everyone away. And then, 3 weeks ago, he comes into my store with this girl. She looked at Clara. And for the first time in 8 years, I saw him smile. Silence. Now you're telling me the law says we gotta rip this child from the only person who's made her feel safe? Mrs. Pritchard's voice shook. From the only person she's made feel alive? What kind of law is that? Reverend Cole stepped forward. I'd like to speak as well. Thornton threw up his hands. This isn't a town meeting. Let him speak, Caldwell said. The Reverend cleared his throat. I've been praying on this since I heard about it. About what's right versus what's legal. And I keep coming back to something. He looked at Clara. The Lord said, suffer the little children to come unto me, not deliver them to the highest bidder. We are not the highest bidder, Thornton said coldly. We are her legal guardians appointed by who? Dr. Wu's accented voice joined in. He stepped forward, small and wiry. By men who know money, not child, not heart. He nodded to Jake. This man bring her to me. Broken eye, bad bruises. He pay me. Dr. Wu pulled coins from his pocket. $4, all he have, for medicine, for bandage. He looked at Thornton. You know this girl's name? Thornton blinked. Clara Elizabeth Hartwell. No. You know who she is, what she like, what make her scared? Silence. This man, no, Dr. Wu said simply. That is family. Thornton's face was red now. Marshal Caldwell, I must insist you execute your duty. We have traveled considerable distance and... Give me a minute, Caldwell said. He walked over to Jake and Clara, stood close enough to speak low. Mr. Mercer, he said quietly, you understand what you're asking? Legal guardianship proceedings could take months, cost hundreds of dollars you don't have, and there's no guarantee you'd win. I know. The estate could fight you every step, make your life hell. Don't care. Caldwell looked at Clara. And you, Miss Hartwell, you understand you'd be giving up a fortune, education at the finest schools, a life most people only dream about? I understand, Clara said softly, but I'd rather have Jake. Something flickered in Caldwell's eyes. She's 9 years old, he said to Jake. What if she changes her mind in a year, 5 years? What if she grows up and regrets? Then she can leave, Jake said. Door's always open, but that's her choice to make. Not yours, not some lawyer's. Caldwell studied them both. Then he turned back to Thornton. I need to see the custody papers, he said. Thornton handed them over, smug. You'll find everything in order. Caldwell read through them slowly. The crowd waited. Clara's hand trembled in Jake's. Finally, Caldwell looked up. These papers appoint the estate executor as temporary guardian pending transport to San Francisco. Correct. And once in San Francisco, a permanent guardian will be appointed by probate court. Yes. Who would that be? Thornton hesitated. That hasn't been determined yet. The court will... So you're asking me to remove this child from a home where she's safe and wanted, Caldwell said slowly, and deliver her to nobody in particular. Just the promise that somebody, eventually, will take responsibility. The estate is money and land, Caldwell cut in. Not a person, not family. He folded the papers. I can't execute this. Thornton's face went purple. You can't, this is a federal matter, and I'm a federal marshal, Caldwell said calmly. And my job is to protect citizens, not deliver children to bureaucracy. He handed the papers back. You want guardianship? File a petition in territorial court. Let a judge decide. But I'm not dragging a crying child away from the only home she's got based on paperwork that doesn't even name a guardian. The yard erupted. Mrs. Pritchard actually clapped. Reverend Cole said amen. The other ranchers nodded approval. Thornton sputtered. This is Marshal Caldwell. I will file a complaint with your superiors. You do that. Caldwell mounted his horse. But until a judge orders otherwise, Miss Hartwell stays where she is. He tipped his hat to Jake, to Clara, then rode out, deputies following. Thornton stood there, papers trembling in his hands. This isn't over, he said to Jake. The estate will file in San Francisco. You'll be ordered to appear, and when you can't afford lawyers or travel then we'll cross that bridge, Jake said quietly. Thornton's lip curled. You're a fool. You'll lose everything. Already lost what mattered once. Jake looked down at Clara. Ain't doing it again. After the lawyers left, after the town dispersed, after Tom rode off with a knowing nod, Jake and Clara stood alone in the yard. Snow was falling again, light, gentle, covering everything fresh. Clara looked up at him. What happens now? Now? Jake knelt down, eye level with her. Now I go to the bank, sell the ranch if I have to, get money for lawyers. Jake, no. It's just land, Clara, just dirt and grass. He touched her face gently. Your family. And family's worth more than all the land in Montana. Her eyes filled. But this is your home. Sarah's grave. We'll come back, visit. But if I gotta choose between keeping this place and keeping you, he smiled. Small, real. That ain't even a choice. Clara threw her arms around him. I love you. The words stopped him cold. Nobody'd said that to him in 8 years. I love you too, he said, voice rough. My girl. Reversal 5 complete. Saving Clara equals saving himself. Choosing her over survival, or choosing life over death. They stood there in the falling snow, a broke rancher and a railroad heiress who didn't care about money, and chose each other. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Spring would bring lawyers, maybe trouble. But that December morning, they had enough. Clara woke to find Jake already outside, splitting wood in the dawn light. She wrapped herself in a blanket and joined him on the porch. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Too much thinking. He set down the axe, sat beside her on the steps. They watched the sun rise over the mountains, winter gold spilling across snow-covered range. The cottonwood on the hill stood dark against the light. I want to show Sarah something, Clara said. Jake looked at her. She went inside, came back with the music box. The brass, gold, really, caught the morning sun. Come with me, she asked. They walked up the hillside together, breath misting in cold air. The wooden cross stood where it always had, simple and weathered. Clara knelt, set the music box carefully at the base of the cross. What are you doing? Jake asked, voice tight. Giving her something of mine. Clara looked up at him. Since she gave me you. She wound the box. Brahms' lullaby played soft in the winter quiet, the same melody Sarah used to hum. The same song that had led Jake to a burned wagon and a small girl who would save his life. My mother loved this song, Clara said, and Sarah loved it too, so now they both have it. She stood, took Jake's hand. And I have you. Jake's throat closed. He looked at the music box playing at his dead wife's grave, offered by a living child who'd chosen him. Circle complete, grief transformed, family reborn. Turns out the land don't need saving, he said quietly, voice rough. just the people on it. Clara smiled. Is that from the Bible? Nah, just something I figured out. They stood there while the melody wound down, while morning light touched the cottonwood branches, while the past and future met on a hillside in Montana. Then they walked back to the cabin, father and daughter, chosen not born, where Tom was waiting on the porch with coffee and that knowing look. Storm's coming in again, Tom said. Jake looked at the horizon. Clear sky, clean light. Don't see no storm. Not that kind, Tom smiled slightly. The lawyer kind. You ready? Jake looked at Clara, at the cabin with smoke rising, at the land he'd die for and the girl he'd live for. Yeah, he said. We're ready. Inside, they sat together, three souls who'd found each other in loss and loneliness. Outside, the music box played on in the snow, a gift to the dead from the living. The future was uncertain. The law was coming. The fight wasn't over. But on that winter morning, with light breaking over mountains, and a child's laughter, warming a cabin that had been cold for 8 years, Jake Mercer finally understood. Some things you save by letting go, and some things save you by holding on.